I can tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, it feels like old times. I covered the Trump White House the first time around, and extended press conferences like this of an impromptu nature were kind of typical, and they have now returned. Welcome back to our continuing coverage here on CBS News 24/7 of the inauguration of our 47th president, Donald Trump, who continues to spar with reporters and take questions inside the Oval Office while signing a raft, that is the best way to describe it, of executive actions and orders. Also, as we were coming into this event in the Oval Office, 1,500 pardons were signed by President Trump, 6 commutations for those who have pled guilty or have been convicted by a jury of their peers for offenses related to the Capitol riot, January 6, 2021. Also, the president said that on February 1st, he said approximately, that would be the time he thought it would be proper to impose tariffs of up to 25% on Canada and Mexico. He also talked at great length about what he may or may not do with TikTok and its threatened ban under federal law. He also talked at length about trying to figure out a way to end the war between Russia and Ukraine, and saying for the first time that Vladimir Putin is destroying Russia, harming its economy, and hollowing out its military, or words to that effect. Also, several executive orders signed about declaring an emergency on the southern border and with American energy production. I'm joined here on the balcony of the Cannon House office building by Finn Gómez, our political director. The feels-like temperature, ladies and gentlemen, is 6. I can confirm that is accurate. Finn, we both experienced what we are seeing playing out now. There's clearly a craving that President Trump has for this attention.
Sure.
And that's sort of speaking off the top of his head, though it's sort of consistent with his underlying philosophy, and a lot of executive actions in the Oval Office tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to say, he was asked about Greenland a little while ago.
Yes. Also, I forgot to mention Greenland.
He was asked about Greenland, the strategic importance, and why he wants to, have it as part of U.S. territory, at least. And I got to say, Major, it does feel a little bit like Greenland here, I would assume. But I think it's just striking. 4 years and 2 weeks ago, right? About 100 yards right behind you over here was a January 6th attack on the Capitol, and it just shows how much has changed. I was there that day. And to go from there to now, where those 1,500 defendants have now been...
Right, we have a complete recasting of what that was then and what President Trump says, and with the power of the pardon pen, has declared it a basic non-event in American history with no criminal implications going forward.
Absolutely not. And also, this is in part, as you know, he campaigned on this for the last 2 years. We saw this. It was on this. It was on immigration, which is in part what they do credit as why he run, right? And here he said he was gonna start day one with a bang, and he essentially has, with these slew of executive actions, and designating some of the cartels and criminal organizations as terrorist organizations. This is all red meat for his base, but also promises that he had said he would do, or actions he said he would take.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Finn, because the implications of declaring drug cartels foreign terrorist organizations means the U.S. military might be involved not just at defending the border, but going into Mexico with military action. And when asked directly about that, just moments ago, President Trump said, I might. Stranger things have happened. Kind of glib about it, but definitely leaving that as a potential future action he might take against the cartels. I also want to catch everyone up on what I was just told by our executive producer, Ali Sands. Scott McFarland tells us that all pending cases, meaning cases that have yet to be resolved and adjudicated related to January 6th, 2021, have been dropped. Wow. That's by the decree of the new Trump Justice Department.
Wow, it just completely, essentially absolves.
Yes, it erases it as if it never happened.
Absolutely, and I think that's, again, it just shows how much the narrative has changed in the last few years, last 4 years. And with this Trump win, and with, this declarative win, and now it shows what he's doing on day one.
And consistent with the rhetoric of his campaign, candidate Trump, nominee Trump, said, this is all politics, and if I win the political argument, I will settle these legal matters my way.
Right.
And that's exactly what he has done this evening. Any other thoughts on what we heard from the president? As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, it is still going on. If there's any other news that develops from the president's remarks, I'm sure intrepid Ali Sansa will let me know, and I will let you know. But Finn, this question also of tariffs. Sure. Canada and Mexico had to be listening. I'm sure their foreign ministries are paying very close attention to this. 25% around February 1st. That's just around the corner.
That's just a couple weeks away.
Yeah.
You know, and like what impact will that have also? I mean, yes, like we you know, from the first administration, we both covered when he threatened and tried to implement some of those similar measures. I mean, will this happen this time? And is it just a threat? Is it a threat to sort of wrangle our neighbors to the north and south? I also thought, Major, it was really interesting what he said about TikTok. Right? Just a couple of days ago, he said he essentially said that he was gonna save TikTok. Right? He talked about the youth and the young voters that came out and support of him, but tonight he basically said that
maybe yes, maybe no. Who knows?
Yes, maybe no, and actually suggested maybe that the U.S. should maybe have half ownership, 50% ownership of TikTok, of the social media.
And the law may not actually grant for him the kind of discretion he's describing, where the president can make all the decisions about this. Only if there's a viable offer on the table. That's the word of the law, and if there isn't, TikTok has to be closed down. How that's enforced, how that word gets to President Trump, we'll find out. Finn Gómez, great to see you. Thanks so much for your time. Lindsey, back to you in New York. It's been a pleasure out here on the Cannon House office building balcony.
Major and Finn can finally get warm. Thank you so much. Of course, we continue our discussions about the many executive orders that President Trump is signing. Let's go ahead and bring in Ed O'Keefe and NOTUS reporter Evan McMorris-Santoro. And of course, as they were talking, we did get an ex-post from Speaker Emerita Pelosi, who says that the president's actions as they relate to pardons and commutations of January 6 defendants are an outrageous insult to our justice system. She said it is shameful that the president has decided to make one of his top priorities the abandonment and betrayal of police officers who put their lives on the line to stop an attempt to subvert the peaceful transfer of power. And Ed, notably, the president not listening to some of his top lieutenants, including his vice president, in saying that these cases should be looked at on a case-by-case basis, Ed.
Yeah, this is he went full enchilada tonight on these pardons, essentially wiping it all clean, as Finn said a moment ago, essentially invalidating all those years of prosecutorial work by the Justice Department. And one of his first actions is to do that. Well, let's remember, the last official action of the outgoing president this morning was to pardon members of his own family out of fear that the new president might also target them in the coming years after saying on the campaign trail for so long that the Biden crime family, as they put it, might need to be investigated. So it hasn't been a good day for the rule of law, depending on whichever president was in charge today, because you've seen examples of them using their powers to flout the justice system, either preemptively or many years after the fact. So, but this is arguably the most dramatic move he made today amid a flurry of executive actions. As we said, we're expecting ultimately it's going to be around 200 specific ones, either in executive orders or other executive actions mandated. It began with, invalidating 78 Biden-era policies on things like health care and climate change and federal worker policy. And tonight here in primetime, you've seen the big ones regarding immigration, declaring a national emergency, suggesting, as he did to reporters, that, yeah, U.S. Special Forces might have to go into Mexico at some point to deal with this. We'll see, leaving that door open, as he's done on so many other things that would terrify allies and foes around the world, as an American president says that. Also, for example, forcing most federal employees back to the office if they aren't already, ending COVID-era restrictions that had remained in place, although it's not going to apply to every federal employee because there are some agencies that have labor agreements that allow for at least some of their workers to work from home or work from home occasionally. And a suite of other things regarding drilling in the Alaska Wildlife Refuge, for example, or rolling back restrictions on oil drilling offshore as well. So you've seen a yin and a yang today. A lot of this, Lindsey, was putting back in place things from Trump 1 that Biden had undone. So undoing things that that Biden had undone and putting them back in place. And then the new things, like the dramatic steps tonight regarding January 6th and ensuring that those that had been prosecuted are now pardoned.
And I'm sure that we're still waiting on the full list of names.
We are.
So we may not know the answer to this, but would this include a commutation of Enrique Tarrio's sentence, who's the former Proud Boys chair, who was sentenced to 22 years for seditious conspiracy?
We believe it does, if only because his mother tonight was on social media suggesting that he's going to be freed.
Okay.
So he is in a federal penitentiary, I believe it's federal penitentiary in Louisiana, not here in Washington, D.C., as many of them are. And his mother, at least, was suggesting that she knew a few hours ago that he was set to be freed today. So yes, it would include the ringleader and the charged and convicted ringleader who now walks free tonight, should he be released as expected.
Ed, don't go anywhere. I want to bring Evan in. Evan, I want to ask you about, I mean, there's so many places that we can start, but one place I would like to start is the executive order ending birthright citizenship, which we know is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment. And you've done some reporting on this and sort of the unknowns that are involved in this.
Yeah, we've been talking to immigration lawyers at NOTUS for the past, couple of weeks, waiting for Trump to come into power. And this is the thing that's so interesting about now, is that this is a lot of stuff we're hearing him say that feels like a campaign speech when you're watching it. But the reality is this stuff is actually all really happening or starting to happen. And this is going to trigger just such a huge amount of conversation, and things like the courts are going to be full of these cases. Immigration lawyers, they don't know exactly what the next steps on this are, but they're ready to go to court immediately to try and stop this stuff, right? And you talk about, we talk about the January 6th commutations and pardons that we just heard about. All these things, they have consequences when you actually really do them, right? So there's a lot of politics that are happening today. It feels like a lot of stuff happening all at one time, right? That big, huge dictator on day one, I'm in, I'm doing it. But as we've seen with other presidents, when this stuff starts, all of a sudden you own whatever comes after all of this. And to see so much happen in one day, the reporter in me just says there's a lot to come back on this administration in the next couple, weeks and months as all this stuff is unwound and processed through the courts, and we see the impact of it on people's lives. It's a lot of stuff.
And we know that, he has said that advisors told him not to do it all on one day, but he wanted to. It's sort of a proof in the pudding, proof to people who voted for him that he's taking action on day one on these things that he promised. One interesting moment that you and I both looked at each other for was when he was asked, did former President Biden leave you a letter? Can you describe that moment?
Well, so tradition is the outgoing president leaves the incoming president a letter in the top of the Resolute desk, sort of giving them some advice, telling them how much they like the job, congratulating them, wishing them good luck. Trump has gone out today really angry at Biden in a way that we don't usually see. Of course, the last time we didn't see it at all because Trump didn't go to the inauguration, wasn't a part of this as much. But, those pardons that Biden did this morning that Ed mentioned, they seem to really make the new president very upset. And I was just really struck by this moment where I believe it was Peter Alexander says to,
Maybe Peter
President
Ducey,
Trump.
Fox News.
Oh, it was
I
Steve?
think so.
Okay, well, okay. Well, this is it serves me right for using my ears instead of my eyes.
You might be right.
But regardless, he says, is there a letter? And Trump opens the drawer, and in real time, there it is. He's like, oh, well, I would never have found this. It was a really remarkable sort of moment from this sort of very television-friendly president that we have. But it was this moment of all of this tradition is happening around this, right? We've seen so much of the sort of pomp and circumstance of an inauguration today, but really in an administration that is promising to change the way things work in politics, change the way things work in Washington, actually trying to do it with these executive orders. And we're seeing, that was just one of those moments that really indicated to me just how different this is, right?
And we should note that the press has left the room, so we are showing you images from the Oval Office that took place just moments ago. Before we go back to Ed, I do want to ask you about another moment in which he said, we need Greenland for national security. I'm sure Denmark will come along. For anybody who didn't have this on their bingo card for 2025, can you catch us up to speed on this?
Well, the president in his last term in office suggested that the U.S. should buy Greenland and make it part of the United States sort of area of control. This has been brought up again during the transition. Don Jr. went out there with a couple of other Trump advisors. They talk about this idea. Denmark has said they're not that interested in selling Greenland to us. So I don't know that anything will really come of it politically, but this is that thing of when rhetoric becomes real, right? 'Cause it's not just Greenland we're hearing about. We're hearing all this sort of saber rattling about Panama.
Right. Can you explain
we don't know what that means.
too?
So the Trump administration is saying that the Panamanians have given a lot of control of the Panama Canal to China, right? This is this argument that China's getting some sort of special access to the Panama Canal. This has been a long conservative cause celebre that they don't like that the U.S. in the 70s turned control of the Panama Canal Zone over to Panama. And Trump has started saying maybe we're going to go and get that back somehow, right? We don't know what that means. But again, 24 hours ago, this was a guy saying this. Now it's the president of the United States saying it. And what that really means, the impact on the global community, on the future of the country, we don't know. It's just an amazing thing to see how fast that can all change. And I think today has been a really striking day to see that and to think about what the implications are going to be.
So much more to chew on with Ed. Ed, I want to bring you back in and talk a little bit about TikTok. We saw yesterday that a lot of users got the error message that it was no longer available because the bipartisan bill the law went into effect that had been signed by President Biden, although he said his administration wouldn't enforce. We know that President Trump has changed his tune on TikTok. He also said in the Oval Office, every rich person has called me about TikTok. Catch us up to speed on the executive order that he issued tonight in relation to the app.
Well, what I believe, Lindsey, there have been so many of them. It's hard to keep track here, but I believe what he was suggesting at one point is that they may not entirely ban it unless or if they can find some way to set up a 50-50 arrangement where some non-Chinese entity controls at least some percentage of it. That would require a new law, and it's going to defy the will and the desires of a lot of Republicans who see a real national security threat to this company being owned by the Chinese or the Chinese entity that owns it. And so, he's inviting disagreement within his own party, despite the fact that it's an incredibly popular, useful, profitable tool for many Americans who can't stand the fact that the rest of the world was still able to use it the other day while they couldn't. And so he also understands, of course, it was quite critical to getting him reelected because it was a pretty effective tool for his campaign and supporters to use. So that is amid all the others. Apparently, at the end of his exchange with reporters, I'm told, he said that President Xi has invited him to China. Now, he had signaled over the weekend that he would like to meet with Xi, and frankly, it is probably one of the top meetings he has to hold as the American president. So whether it's in China, whether it's here, whether it's at a, third country, we'll wait and see. But they've got plenty to discuss between tariffs, TikTok, cyber espionage, the future of Taiwan, the future of the war in Ukraine, the situation in the Middle East, its interest in the Panama Canal and other Latin America infrastructure. There's plenty for them to talk about. And it's a conversation that needs to happen sooner rather than later. So we'll see whether it's there or here. But lots of news made tonight, obviously, just in the last hour in this Oval Office exchange on top of everything else that happened.
And Ed, remind us, too, how President Trump is tying energy and all of his executive actions on energy and drill, baby, drill to inflation and to the cost of living crisis.
The argument is that the Biden administration wasn't doing enough to lower the cost of gas and other goods and services. And so if you allow for more domestic energy production, it should drive down the cost. The counter-argument to that is oil companies have had pretty generous access to federal lands on which to drill in recent years. They just aren't investing in doing so because they're concerned that there may not be enough supply or demand for fossil fuels. So they're just not doing it in this country. Now the argument is they can in Alaska or potentially offshore. We'll see if they actually do or not. And I think that question of what is this doing to help lower the cost of eggs, gas, clothing, whatever other services is one that a lot of critics or skeptics of this president are going to continue to ask. And you could look at today and say, what did he do today to actually take that on, since the economy was essentially issue number one?
Right.
Some of what he did will do that. A lot of what he did today, and will get most of the attention, has nothing to do with the price of living in America. And his critics will start to seize on that in the coming days.
Ed O'Keefe and Evan McMorris-Santoro, my thanks to both of you.